Something is happening to classic RV ownership that the industry and certain legislators do not want you thinking too hard about. By the time most owners understand what is being written into emissions frameworks, campground use policies, and registration requirements, the window to push back may already be narrowing. What starts in California has a documented history of becoming a national template, and the RV community is next. The framework being dismantled. For decades, the relationship between recreational vehicle owners and the regulatory environment operated on a straightforward premise. You owned the vehicle, you maintained it, you used it. The state set basic safety and registration requirements, collected its fees, and largely stayed out of the question of when and how you drove the machine you had paid for. Within that framework, a 1994 diesel pusher or a 1998 travel trailer occupied a legal and cultural space that was clearly defined. You could drive it to a national park. You could tow it to a campground on a Tuesday. You could take it on a 2-week trip through the Southwest without triggering a compliance review or receiving a notification from a remote monitoring system that your vehicle's operational profile had been flagged. That framework is being dismantled through a combination of emissions legislation, connected vehicle mandates, campground use restrictions, and registration requirement updates that each appear routine in isolation and collectively represent a fundamental shift in who controls the operational decisions for privately owned recreational vehicles. The recreational vehicle owner who bought a pre-2005 diesel unit because it was mechanically honest, repairable without proprietary software, and free from the surveillance architecture built into post-2020 models is now discovering that the policy environment is moving specifically against the characteristics that made that purchase rational. What the legislation actually does. The California Air Resources Board's in-use off-road diesel vehicle regulation has already created compliance requirements that effectively prohibit older diesel RVs from operating in certain contexts within the state. The regulation was sold as an air quality measure targeting commercial heavy equipment. The language that governs which vehicles fall under its scope is broad enough to capture recreational diesel units that were never the intended target of the policy, or were always the intended target, and the commercial framing was the presentation strategy. Supporters argue the regulation appropriately extends clean air standards across all diesel operations. That argument collapses when you examine what it produces in practice: a compliance cost for a vintage diesel RV that exceeds the market value of the vehicle, making continued legal operation economically impossible for the owner who cannot afford the retrofit or replacement. The campground electrification movement introduces a parallel restriction mechanism. Federal and state grant programs are funding the replacement of traditional hookup infrastructure with electric vehicle charging integrated sites that are designed around post-2020 connected vehicle standards. As older hookup pedestals are retired and replaced, the infrastructure compatibility for pre-electronics era RVs quietly degrades. An owner of a 1996 motorhome discovers that the campground they have used for 15 years has upgraded its electrical system in ways that are incompatible with the wiring standard their unit requires. The campground has not banned them. The infrastructure has simply evolved past their vehicle. That distinction matters less when you are standing in the parking lot with nowhere to plug in. The proportionality problem. The emissions contribution of recreational diesel vehicles from before 2005 to total measured air quality impact is marginal by any honest measurement. The total number of vintage recreational vehicles in active use represents a fraction of the diesel vehicle fleet. Their aggregate annual mileage is a fraction of the commercial heavy equipment that emissions regulations were designed to address. Designing a regulatory framework that forces vintage recreational vehicle owners into compliance costs that total the value of their vehicles in order to address a measurable but minor emissions contribution is not proportional governance. It is overreach applied through administrative language that sounds technical enough to escape broad public scrutiny. What makes this disproportionate response particularly difficult to accept is who benefits from it. The manufacturers producing connected recreational vehicles from after 2020 have a direct financial interest in the retirement of vehicles from before the electronics era that compete in the used market. Every classic diesel pusher that becomes legally or economically impractical to operate is a potential buyer redirected toward new inventory. The Recreational Vehicle Industry Association, RVIA, represents manufacturer interests first and owner interests when they align. When they diverge, the lobbying position reflects production economics, not the interests of the person who owns a 1999 Class A that runs perfectly and represents no meaningful environmental threat to anyone. The legal ambiguity buried in the language. The emissions and use regulations being applied to older recreational vehicles share a structural characteristic with Minnesota's HF3, 865, and every other regulatory overreach in this pattern. The critical terms are undefined in ways that create enforcement discretion rather than legal clarity. What constitutes a recreational vehicle for purposes of a given emissions regulation versus what constitutes commercial equipment is not always clearly drawn. Whether a vintage diesel motorhome operating within an air quality management district triggers compliance requirements depends on interpretations that vary by district, by enforcement officer, and by the specific operational context on a given day. This is not accidental design. Vague statutory language gives enforcement agencies maximum discretion and places the burden of legal certainty on the private owner rather than on the state. An owner of a pre-2005 diesel recreational vehicle must now navigate a compliance landscape where two identical vehicles could face completely different enforcement outcomes depending on geography, the specific district's current enforcement priorities, and whether the officer who encounters the vehicle on a given day is applying a broad or narrow reading of the applicable statute. That uncertainty alone reshapes behavior. Owners who cannot afford the legal exposure stop using vehicles they legally own. The chilling effect of regulatory ambiguity achieves the policy outcome without requiring a clear prohibition that could be challenged in court. The connected vehicle mandate and what it means for older units. The federal connected vehicle architecture requirements being phased in through 2026 and beyond create a compliance standard that pre-electronics era recreational vehicles cannot meet without a retrofit investment that is economically irrational relative to the vehicle's market value. The requirements were framed as safety improvements, collision notification, remote monitoring, impaired driving detection. The architecture they mandate is identical to the data collection infrastructure that generates revenue for manufacturers and insurers through behavioral surveillance. A 1998 diesel pusher cannot be retrofitted to participate in that architecture without a cost that exceeds the vehicle's market value several times over. The practical result is that older recreational vehicles become progressively excluded from campgrounds, roads, and registration categories that were designed around connected vehicle compliance. This exclusion does not require a law that says classic recreational vehicles are banned. It requires only that new standards be written around connected architecture, that campground infrastructure be upgraded to serve connected vehicles, and that registration renewal requirements gradually incorporate connectivity compliance checkpoints. Each step is individually defensible as a modernization measure. Collectively, they produce the same outcome as a direct prohibition, without the political cost of passing one. The California playbook applied to recreational vehicles. The broader pattern. The pressure on classic RV ownership does not exist in isolation. It is one element of a coordinated set of policy and industry movements pushing in the same direction, away from owner autonomy and toward manufacturer and government control over vehicle use. Right to repair legislation for recreational vehicles has been introduced and then weakened or defeated in multiple states, with manufacturer coalitions applying the same arguments used against automotive right to repair, such as safety concerns, proprietary system integrity, and liability exposure. Independent RV mechanics are being locked out of diagnostic systems introduced after 2020. The average RV repair cost has climbed at rates that substantially exceed inflation, while the complexity of the systems requiring repair has been deliberately increased. Repair costs rose 59% over the past decade, while technician wages rose only 34%. That same asymmetry documented in automotive repair is appearing in RV service data as well. Every one of these pressures serves the same interest. A buyer who cannot repair their existing RV affordably, who cannot legally operate a unit from before the electronics era in an increasing number of contexts, and who faces campground infrastructure that is being upgraded past their vehicle's compatibility, is a buyer who will eventually return to the dealer. The manufacturers who lobbied against right to repair, who benefit from the retirement of used inventory that would otherwise compete with new sales, and whose connected vehicle platforms generate recurring revenue streams, have a unified financial interest in the regulatory and infrastructure direction that is being pursued. Treating that alignment as coincidental requires ignoring a substantial body of documented lobbying activity and policy outcome. What should actually concern legislators? If the stated policy goals are air quality improvement and road safety modernization, targeted enforcement against documented violations achieves those goals without penalizing the responsible majority. Classic RV owners represent one of the most maintenance-conscious segments of the recreational vehicle market. These are people who actively invest in keeping older vehicles mechanically sound because they cannot rely on a manufacturer warranty or a dealer service department to address problems. They perform their own maintenance, source parts proactively, and operate vehicles that function correctly because the owner has a direct mechanical relationship with every system. Treating that community as a regulatory problem to be managed rather than a preservation asset to be protected reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of what classic RV ownership represents. The economic contribution of the vintage RV community, restoration specialists, classic parts suppliers, independent mechanics who service pre-electronics era units, campgrounds that host vintage rallies, and charitable events built around classic vehicle culture, is being treated as invisible in the policy discussion the same way it was ignored in the collector car legislation analysis. That economic reality does not disappear because a regulation fails to account for it. It disappears along with the community that generated it, and it does not return when the policy is eventually reconsidered. The classic RV community has operated for decades as one of the most preservation-minded and self-sufficient segments of American recreational culture. The owners who maintain pre-electronics era units represent a constituency with deep roots in mechanical literacy and independent ownership values, values that the modern connected vehicle industry is working systematically to make economically and legally impractical. HF 3865, California's emissions framework applied to recreational diesel vehicles, the connected vehicle mandate, and the campground infrastructure transition. None of these individually eliminates the classic RV. Together, they produce that outcome incrementally through a series of steps, each framed as a routine administrative update or a safety improvement. Once the regulatory environment begins defining acceptable use of privately owned recreational property through emissions compliance checkpoints, connectivity mandates, and infrastructure exclusion, the question is not just whether any specific regulation goes too far. The question is what comes next, because every restriction that passes without organized pushback becomes the baseline for the next proposal. The window to engage with this pattern is while the individual steps are still individually contestable, before the cumulative effect has already redefined the landscape. Paying close attention to the language moving through state legislatures and federal regulatory agencies right now, especially the language that sounds the most routine, is not paranoia. It is the only rational response to a documented pattern. If this investigation changed how you see what is happening to classic RV ownership and who benefits from it, subscribe to this channel. We publish one forensic audit per week into the regulatory decisions, industry lobbying, and policy patterns that the RV market counts on owners not examining until it is too late. The next investigation is already in progress. Do not miss it.